Hey there, new types. Here we are in GD03 Steel Requiem. We've got some new toys to play with. I was fortunate enough to get all the pieces I needed for one of my decks and was able to bring it into locals to get some games in. For Showcase 8, we've got the highly anticipated Barbatos Lupus deck, and this is what I think is one of the better ways to play it currently. There are a few builds going around. Most are mostly mono purple with a small splash of either blue or white. I opted for the blue splash myself, but with more blue than most. Naturally, for the good stuff, as you may see already. Shout out to my local game store and community that allow me to record our matches so I can get the gameplay footage to you all here. None of this would be possible without them. As always, there will be a deck breakdown at the end of the video, so if you want to skip the gameplay and go straight there, I don't mind. I'm just happy you clicked on the video at all. If you like what you see, please consider dropping a like and maybe a follow for the channel. If you have any questions, suggestions, or even commentary, feel free to post below. I do my very best to answer every comment, and they help me gauge anything I need to adjust going forward, or even ideas for the next few decks. Anyways, that's enough of an intro. It's time to battle. Alright, Gundam players, we're getting ourselves started out over here. I roll a pair of sixes. And my opponent rolls a pair of fours, so I opt to go second. He doesn't have dice for today, he forgot his dice bag, so we're sharing mine. He decides to keep his hand. I draw a Hyakurin, a Barbatos Adapt, a Show of Resolve, the Hotarubi, and Amuro. It's good enough to keep. It's got a curve, so I set out my shields. My opponent is going to be going first. Plays out a resource and passes the turn. I actually draw a Gray's Custom for my turn 1, so I actually have a turn 1 play. Get that bad boy out and pass my turn. Gets a second resource and he passes his turn. Get my third resource. I take a swing at his shield. I had drawn another Hotarubi. Play out a Hyakurin, and then pass my turn over. Nice, fairly aggressive start for things. He plays out a Rick Diaz, and then plays out the new base Devow. Really cool base. It is in basically blue-white blockers and also in the repair deck. Just a generally good card that I think you're going to see a lot more of going forward. I play out one of my Hotarubis and eat my EX base to get a card off of my shields, which ends up being a Lupus. My opponent wants to see what the card does because, brand new base. I take a swing at the base, and he allows it to happen. Place down my Adapt. This is mostly just to make him commit to spending resources on either the Devow or letting it get eaten. I use the Hotarubi's ability, having pinged my own unit, and mill the top of my deck by 1. Plays out a second Rick Diaz, heals his damaged Rick Diaz, then sends it into my Hyakurin. Does eat up all his resources, which I'm generally okay with, but leaves him with 2 units, 1 with 2 damage on board. I drew another Barbatos Adapt. I pair my Amuro to my Adapt. take out his undamaged Rick Diaz, leaving my adapt with 2 HP. And then I play my second adapt out. Dealing itself 1 damage, and 1 damage to his Rick Diaz to get rid of it. I do get to mill the top of my deck as a result. And then I swing with the Hyakrin into the Deval. With that, I pass my turn. Plays out an Ale Strike, the new one. Pairs it with Paptimus to make it a 5/6. Play out a Show of Resolve for myself to draw 2. Take a swing at his shields with my Hyakrin. I take another swing at his shields. This time he blocks and eats my paired adapt. And because I have a Lupus in hand, this is where I decide I'm going to start playing towards getting things in the graveyard. Haven't been as aggressive with that this game as I could be. So I trade into his Ale Strike before he can drop down something like a Devow and heal it. For his turn, he plays the NT1, pairs it with Amuro, deals 1 damage to my Hawkman, but then crashes into it anyways. And then he passes his turn, heals himself 2 damage, and now I have a paired NT1 to deal with. So I have my Lupus, I have a Mika in hand, so I play the Lupus, and then I decide I'm going to pair it with Mika, deal 1 damage to myself, 1 damage to my opponent, get to trigger my Hodorubi, and then I exile 3 cards, specifically Tekdan Tewaz, and deal the remaining 2 damage to his NT1. And then I take a swing at his shields, putting him down to 3. My opponent plays out a Psycho Gundam and attaches 4 to it. Goes after my base instead, and then passes the turn. I draw another Lupus, so this one is now expendable, but, you know, not entirely expendable. I play another Hodorubi out, and I am playing around the possibility of an unforeseen. So I do get my Grandpa Gundam out. Pair my Amuro to it, and then take a swing with my Lupus at his Psycho. It is a trade, but, you know, got around an unforeseen that he probably had. At least that was my assumption. And then I take a swing at his shields, bringing him down to 2. Just keeping that pressure on. Plays out a Show of Resolve. Plays out another Ale Strike. And a 4 paired to it to make it a 5/5. just do a quick little bit of graveyard rearranging so I know how much resources I have in there. Play out my Gusian. I do ping my Gundam here, but I do realize after I try to use the Hotarubi, new cards and all, that I was supposed to ping my Gusian. So we just kind of fixed that a little bit. And ping my Gusian there, and then I mill my card off the top of the deck. I play out a Frieden, more or less to see what I have in my shields. Draw another Hyakurin. I play that guy out. And then I rest his blocker and take a swing at his shields. And then I pass my turn. He plays out an Ale Strike, rests my Gusian, and bounces my Hyakurin. He paired it with an Amuro, by the way. Takes a swing at my RX-78 and uses an unforeseen incident to make sure that it doesn't die. So I do play out my Lupus here. Pair it with Amuro to rest his Ale Strike. Use 3 of my resources, or not resources, but 3 of my units from the graveyard to ping down his Ale Strike. And then I swing at his shields and play down a Hyakurin. Plays out the O with Paptimus, gives his Ale Strike a repair 2, and then plays out the Masala. Swings into my Gusian, takes it out, takes 5 damage, and then heals 3 at the end of his turn. That's some crazy work right there. Big damage. So I play out another Frieden. I need to see something in my shields. I play out Adapt, ping my own Hotarubi. Oh, not Hotarubi, my own Hyakurin. Take a swing at his life, block to Masala. I take a swing again. He blocks with his Ale Strike. We trade. And then I play out the Gusian with him top decking and the O not being a blocker. He gets the Rick Diaz, and with that, that is game. All right. I hope you guys enjoyed the gameplay. And this is going to be the deck breakdown and a little bit of explanation of how it plays out and why. So the Barbatos Lupus is a, pretty hyped up card. It's a card that people have been looking forward to for quite some time now once it was spoiled. And its main ability is choose 3 Tekkadan or Tewas units from your trash, exile them from the game, If you do, choose one enemy unit, deal 2 damage to it. You can activate this as many times as you want within a single turn, as long as you have the cards in your graveyard to exile it. And that's the really important part. Lupus ends up being your sweeper. So, very similar to the role of Wing Zero, you're dropping it and you are trying to get as much value as you can right away. And a lot of these decks, they focus on trying to get a minimum of 6 units in the graveyard by their level 7 turn. This means that they can activate it twice, they get basically 4 damage off of it, and if they have a Mika to pair it, they can swing immediately as well. Mathematically, usually if your deck can reliably get, about 7 to 8 units in the trash by turn 7, or I guess your level 7 rather, you're going to be doing all right. The deck, usually the way you're building it, should get you enough, and maybe even another activation after. Primarily, you are aiming to use your units as your removal suite. You're being aggressive, you're trading with your opponent, you are going to be making up a lot of your value with Lupus towards the end of the game, or with your ping damage. So Ryusei Go likes that you cycle cards into your trash. You're throwing things at your opponent, hitting a Rigdius for 1 damage with a Mika or your Adapt or your Gusian, and then you are swinging in with, your Gray's custom and just getting both things into the graveyard. Now, the variants of these decks are basically commonly white for Overflowing Affection or blue for Show of Resolve. There have been people who have been considering running green for Wing Zero as a top end, so you kind of have like this double sweeper action. And I may do a video on that one because I have been testing it and I don't mind it. I actually find that the blue isn't necessary. However, the way this deck has set itself out, I am quite liking the Amuro RX-78 edition. The other thing that is missing from this deck compared to other ones is that it's not running Zahart. And Zahart, when you pair it with a unit, you discard the top 2 cards of your deck. So it helps your game plan around, but it really only is active at turn 5 onward. It does kind of help because you're throwing it onto a unit and then swinging that unit into something, and usually that unit plus the heart's dying, plus the 2 cards off the top of your graveyard. So you are pretty reliably hitting that 7-card threshold by level 7. The other thing that I'm not running that you'll see in the more mono purple lists are like the 4th form and the 3rd form, and they all have their merits, and even the Ryoe is pretty good, but ultimately I wanted Amuro and RX-78, and I was running different versions of the deck to start with. I found the Show of Resolve version and the Overflowing Affection version both kind of suffered into blockers a little bit, and I needed a little bit more power to get through things. I had tried Laughter. She had given me high maneuver, and she was doing very well. And then I kind of had this little epiphany. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And if it's broken, use it. And what's more broken in Gundam right now, which is basically the RX-78 and Amuro, and then Show of Resolve. So you have 3 of some of the best blue cards in the format in here, and that's kind of all you need. You don't need the Anxas, you don't need the gun tanks, but Amuro and RX-78 are just cards that they mean you don't need to get to that 9. You don't need to get 3 activations on Barbatos, right? Like you can just go and control the board well enough that you only really need the 2 activations on Lupus, and you can start building things up through there. So you're not really falling behind, and you're not really running too slow. The other thing with my version of the deck is I am running the 3 Hodorubis and 3 Frieden, and I like that split. Some people ask me why I'm not running 4 of the Hodorubi, and the basic thing is, depending on the matchup, the Frieden is really good early on, and you don't necessarily want to see too many, but you also don't want it to um, be necessarily dead. So being able to play Frieden on like turn 2 or even your turn 1, if you're playing into something aggressive like 1 Year War, helps you get cards in your graveyard early, and then you can kind of follow it up with a Hodorubi, or just something bursts off of your shield, which is actually fairly common now that you're running 6 bases in this list. Naturally, you don't have to. If you really wanted to make room for it, I would say running the Hodorubi is still the better base. The 3-3 split just kind of works for the way that I've built this deck and the way that I'm kind of treating the RX-78 and Amuro package, and how I'm kind of treating Amuro as more of a command card half the time. But there, as I said, there's other versions of the deck. This is not the be all end all, but I do feel like this version of the deck is pretty straightforward, but also pretty strong and very stable. And it's not quite as all in as the other two versions with Zahart or Overflowing Affection. And I think for me that's better, at least my playstyle. I think there's definitely merits to being all in. I've seen people with 12, 14 units in their graveyard at any given time, and they just go and machine gun down the board. And if you like doing that, by all means, and I couldn't blame you. But that'll be it for me for now. Let me know if you have any questions, and I'm happy to answer anything in the comments below. Thanks for tuning in. Peace.